What's going on, everybody? TJ here from TJ's Take. We've got some Monday Night Football tonight between the Cincinnati Bengals visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Great night to play DFS because this game is just going to be a dud. I mean, nothing exciting. Two mediocre teams at best. But, I mean, this is a rivalry game. These two teams do hate each other. I think there's going to be a lot of points. So, I mean, if you're playing DFS, this is probably going to be one of the more fun ones we've had, and I'm really excited for it. The problem is, FanDuel definitely missed some prices, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. Um, James Conner's too cheap. We'll get into that later. I mean, James Conner against this Bengals defense should be able to play a good game, but that's where everybody's going to go. Um, I mean, if he goes off, he goes off. If you fade him, you're ahead of the rest of the field. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, Baseball, we're getting into the postseason here, so I'll try and hop on here as much as I can and do some single games for those. I know we have one tomorrow night, start of the postseason, NL wildcard game, Brewers and Nationals. There's a 30K top prize in there, along with a lot of other good contests. Baseball single games are always awesome. You know how I always say we like to leave salary on here. You can do whatever you want in baseball. I mean, obviously matchups matter. There's a lot better pitching, but especially in the National League ones, when you do have great pitching, we can get a little crazy and start throwing even some pinch hitters in there, guys who only get one at bat at around 1% ownership, if that. It can end up paying off. Last year, I did a Cubs game. I played David Bote in one. It wasn't a starter. Ended up hitting a grand slam that immediately separates you from the field. Fun things like that can win you some big bucks in the MLB. So we've got that whole postseason coming up. The 30K is just kind of the start. Once you get into the series and stuff, I'm assuming they'll have bigger prizes. Then once we get to the World Series, I think FanDuel does a million or at least a 500K. I'm not sure about DraftKings, but definitely something to look forward to. If you don't know a ton about baseball, just hop on the podcast. Um, we'll try and break down those slates for you. Anyways, we'll jump right into this one. We have a 200K to first over here on FanDuel, along with a lot of other good contests. So, I mean, you can definitely pick and choose. I know I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it. Once these contests do fill up right before the game, FanDuel will throw a few more contests in there around the same price, a lot smaller field with still some really good prizes, which gives you a better chance to, hit first, have different lineups, really separate yourself, and sometimes those don't even fill up. So you give yourself a really good shot if you do just want to wait instead of attacking this 200,000. FanDuel does throw some contests in there that, I mean, I'm not going to say easy, but a lot better odds of hitting something pretty decent. But if you're playing a lot of lineups, you've been looking at the game, you feel pretty good about this one, hey, do you, and go for that 200,000. I mean, that's what I'm going to be doing. So the game itself, two terrible defenses, running and passing. I love the receivers in this one. James Conner, what I was going to talk about. We have James Conner at 12K. On FanDuel, we don't pay extra for that top spot. If we did, I would assume everybody would take James Conner. So that's kind of, I don't know what his price is on DraftKings, but if he's priced too cheap over there, I would just fade him completely. Don't put him in your top spot. Don't put him in a flex spot and see how it turns out for you. Because if you do that, you are fading a huge portion of the field. James Conner does have yet to produce. Cincinnati's very much struggling against the run. So if they focus in on the run tonight and James Conner doesn't do much, and they're going to make, the rookie beat him through the air and Mason Rudolph, which is, seems pretty plausible to me. James Conner could have another dud tonight. And, everybody's going to target him against this bad Bengals rush defense. So I'm going to start out by fading him first. A guy that's going to go a little lower owned on FanDuel is Joe Mixon because he's actually $500 more expensive than James Conner. A little surprising. And I think people would more likely want to go to John Ross or Tyler Boyd. Boyd is $500 more expensive. Ross is $1,000 less expensive or $1,000 cheaper. And I think John Ross, I'm not that huge on him, but I think a lot of other people out there are. And I mean, I see a couple big games and they think this guy's awesome. I mean, he's going to have a big play in here. So I think I can fade him as well. And I think Juju and Tyler Boyd are my favorites tonight up top. Pair them with their quarterbacks, and then we'll break it down from there. So let's go ahead and start one out with Tyler Boyd up top. I do like the Bengals. This game's going to be pretty much a toss-up for me. I like the Bengals. I mean, they have Andy Dalton back there, experience. Mason Rudolph, we don't know much about him. The game is in Pittsburgh, but I'm going to go ahead and side with the Bengals on this one. So we're going to put Boyd up top. Obviously, we're going to pair the quarterback with him and Andy Dalton. And then I'm going to come down here and grab Juju. And I just don't think there's a way Boyd and Juju don't make it in this top 5 players tonight. Obviously, they both could, and one could miss it if we have a cheap guy do well. But we're going to go ahead and try and nail that spot as well. So when we do that, we can go ahead and... Actually, no, we can't do that. Yeah, so once that's in, I actually like coming down here and grabbing Joe Mixon. I think he's going to be too low owned today, and we aren't going to leave a ton of salary with this lineup, but I think we can be different enough where it's a solid play, and in those other tournaments where you're not going for the 200,000, I think this is very solid because of this last guy we're going to plug in. Might go a little lower owned. We still are leaving $1,000 if we plug Nick Van Ed in. Pittsburgh, they lost, what is his name? Vance McDonald to a shoulder. So Pittsburgh loves to use the tight end. They didn't really have one after they lost him. Didn't like any. They went out and got Nick Van Ed, who was on the Seahawks since Disley took his spot. They were very adamant about getting him and getting him quick and getting him in touch with the offense. So I think he's definitely going to see some snaps tonight. I think he's going to get some catches. And he's sitting there at $5K min price. Really like that play tonight, especially in the red zone. At 5,000, he doesn't need to do much. And I think he can definitely get you there. I'm hoping he's sneaky. I hope not a lot of people get on the train of picking him. So that would be my pick as well. And I don't think we have another min price guy that I'm willing to go to. Alex Erickson, I don't think he's that great. They tried to throw to him a couple of times. Switzer, I think he returns kicks, but that's a big chance. So I think Van Et's our best min price guy here. So that lineup is Tyler Boyd, Andy Dalton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Joe Mixon, and Nick Van Et. We're leaving $1,000 on the table. That's more Bengals heavy, so I like that. Let's kind of go the Steelers side here and plug Juju in this next lineup, and let's pair him with Mason Rudolph. And what I like to do here, if we're going to have Rudolph in the lineup, I like coming down and grabbing James Washington. They play together in college. James Washington can obviously catch the deep ball. All it takes is one against this bad Cincinnati defense. It could definitely happen. James Washington get rid of a little bit of ownership with big play potential. I like that play tonight. Even if he does get around 18 to 20% ownership, I think it's still a really good play because it allows us to leave some salary and still get 2 good players. So after that, let's see what I can do here. I'm going to go ahead and plug Boyd in again. So that leaves us with 13,000 still. Oh, that's what I was going to talk about is kickers in this one. So we like kickers on these single games, but tonight I just don't love them. I didn't really love them last night either, and you saw how that turned out. You needed Lutz. Lutz is definitely in the winning lineup, but I just think that these guys are going to get in the end zone tonight. I wouldn't play both kickers together tonight. I think you can go ahead and play one. If you're going to play one, I think Boswell's the guy. I could see Pittsburgh getting down there and not getting in the end zone as opposed to a Boyd or John Ross or even Joe Mixon pounding it in the end zone. I think the Steelers have less likely of a chance, so I would go that way. But so if we did that, we're leaving $3,000 on the table, so I love that. Always love leaving salary. So you can go that route. Um, I don't really love going four-man stacks on the same team here just because I do think it's going to stay close. So I think you could actually come down here, and if you do want to take both receivers on the Cincinnati side, what scares me about that is not having Andy Dalton in the lineup, so James Washington would have to catch a deep ball, and Juju would have to catch a touchdown. I mean, very possible, but yeah, as long as I think both of these receivers can do well with Andy Dalton not reaching his full price tag and James Washington getting enough value where we can knock Andy Dalton out of there and he doesn't have to be in our top 5. So this is kind of an interesting build to me. If you have 2 of the top Cincinnati receivers and then you have 2 targets on the Steelers side with their quarterback, Juju being up top. This is an interesting build, especially for tournaments. You're leaving $1,500 on the table. I actually think the kicker, even though I just said I don't like pairing 4 Steelers together, if you throw their kicker in there, I do like that. I think it's actually a little safer than throwing John Ross in there if you put Boswell in. And then you just kind of hope the game's kind of like last night, not as much scoring as expected. Another guy we can throw in here too and mix this up a little bit. Throw Tyler Eifert in there. And then if we do that, I actually like... I'm just going to go through a whole another different lineup, actually. So we'll go ahead and leave... we'll go ahead and put Boyd up top again. And this one can be... If you like Ross, like I said, if you like Ross and you want to play Ross, go ahead and play Ross. Just because I don't like him doesn't mean he's not going to have a great game. I think Tyler Boyd is way more likely to. I mean, he's shown it in the past. He's gotten double-digit targets every single game. Has yet to really have a dud. So I think he's safer up top. I think getting away... I think James Conner is going to be so popular, and then we have Juju right on the same level as Tyler Boyd, where I think people will have Tyler Boyd around maybe 33% of the lineups will have him up top, 30%. I'll take those odds over James Conner if we can be a little different in our flex spots. So Tyler Boyd up top, follow that with Andy Dalton, and then we have Tyler Eifert in our lineup at 7.5. So we have 24.5 to work with still. So since we're going with their pass threats here, I can take a James Conner in this one. And let's say Pittsburgh keeps it on the ground, and I like taking their kicker. Then you leave $2,500 salary. So you have Tyler Boyd up top, Andy Dalton, James Conner, Chris Boswell, and then Tyler Eifert. Andy Dalton throws a touchdown to Tyler Boyd, throws a touchdown to Tyler Eifert. Pittsburgh can't get anything done besides on the ground with James Conner, and Boswell kicks a few field goals. I can very well see that happening. I actually really like this lineup. Tyler Eifert, love to get in the ball in the end zone. Another thing really sneaky too that you can do in that big $200,000 tournament, play Eifert and Van Ness in the same lineup. So let's try and get one of those in here too. I think that's very sneaky. You're taking a little bit of a risk, but that's what you have to do if you want to get that $200,000 all to yourself. So let's go ahead and plug Van Ness and Eifert in here together. If it wants to. Alright. And then I say we come up here and let's grab Juju again, put him up top, either him or Boyd. Must have already lost Van Ness. There he is. Alright. So that leaves us 34,000 remaining per player. Now what you can easily do is go grab both quarterbacks because obviously they're going to be throwing them the ball and you leave $5,000 salary remaining. So if Mason Rudolph and Juju have a great game, say Andy Dalton only gets it to Eifert in the end zone, and then Van Ness in there mixed in with Pittsburgh, you leave $5,000 salary on the table. Not a lot of people are going to have this lineup. And, I mean, in a football game, it is not very unlikely a receiver goes nuts, both tight ends have great games, and both quarterbacks have great games. I mean, that just sounds like a football game to me. So take salary out of it for a second. Just look at the lineup and think, well, I mean, that could very easily happen. Eifert can definitely score more than Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has bad days. The only thing that scares me is we don't have a Boyd or a John Ross in there. But if you really want to, I think we can go ahead and take Andy Dalton out and put Tyler Boyd in like we did last time. Leave $7,000 salary out there. I mean, Boyd can still. It's not that we need him to even score more than Andy Dalton. We need him to get better value than Andy Dalton. So if Andy Dalton's touchdown pass is to Tyler Eifert and it's a short touchdown pass, and then Tyler Boyd is just getting a ton of yards, they can both easily get over Andy Dalton here. And we're leaving $7,000 salary on the table. I absolutely love that. You still have Mason Rudolph with 2 Pittsburgh targets and the one being up top. Love that lineup for tournaments. We better go through one just to be safe with James Conner up top. I mean, he could very well be a top scorer of the night. And let's see how different we can get because he's going to be the most popular player in that top spot tonight. So let's go ahead and put our skill positions in that we like with him in Boyd and Smith-Schuster, and let's try and just get away from some quarterbacks here. So we have 21.5 remaining, so that's about 10,750 per player. I think we can go ahead and plug Ty Eifert in again. I really do like that play for a touchdown tonight. And that leaves us 14,000, just enough to get up to Mason Rudolph if we want to. I think we can fill this in with all skill players, and it makes it really interesting. And not having a quarterback with James Conner might be the way to go if you want to put him in your top spot. Because I guarantee at least 75% of the lineups where he's up top will have a quarterback in it. So if you put James Conner up top with Tyler Boyd, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyler Eifert, and Joe Mixon, you're just playing all position players, and you're seeing how that one works. I love that. Again, mix any position players you want into that. Mix a couple kickers into that. Let's actually do that. So let's put James Conner up top. Like I said, I don't like playing both kickers tonight. Let's put Randy Bullock in there just because we haven't yet at 9,000. I think that's a good price for a leg. And let's see what happens if we go Juju and John Ross instead of Boyd. We can still get to Boyd. So if you wanted to, you could play James Conner, Randy Bullock, Juju Smith-Schuster, John Ross, and Tyler Boyd. The only thing I don't love about that is you're getting 2 wide receivers who you're on Cincinnati who you're expecting to score a touchdown. You're only getting 2 points out of Bullock. So that just doesn't leave enough room for Cincinnati. If they're scoring all these points, you're going to want one of those guys in the top spot. So I like coming down here and just getting Mixon instead of Tyler Boyd there. And then that way we leave 1,500 on the table. We get some Cincinnati ground game in there. We get points that way. And that only leaves 1 receiver for us to get a big chunk of points instead of having to get 2. So Joe Mixon rushes. I mean, at the end of the game, he's rushing, closing out the clock, rushing to get in field goal territory for Randy Bullock. All these kinds of things can happen. So I like this lineup a little more with James Conner, Randy Bullock, Juju, John Ross, and Joe Mixon. Like I said, if you're not big on John Ross like I am, you can go ahead and take him out. If you put Tyler Boyd in, you're using all your salary. I think that's going to be way too popular of a lineup. You can go ahead and try and throw that other kicker in. Maybe the game ends like last night. Let's go ahead and put Auden Tate in there and leave 5,000. Let's say Auden Tate's the guy instead of John Ross tonight who's getting all the catches. John Ross isn't getting open. Auden Tate's out there, catches a few balls, and that's all he needs. You leave $5,000 salary on the table because he's only $8K. Other than that, I hope you guys pretty much get the gist of this slate tonight. I'm thinking it's going to be high scoring. I don't love the 2 kicker plays. I do not mind at all throwing 1 kicker in there. I think Joe Mixon goes lower owned. I think you need Boyd and or Juju in your lineups. Andy Dalton, I think you can kind of lie off of him in your builds a little bit, but don't be surprised if he is in that top 5 if one of these cheaper guys doesn't do anything. If Eifert doesn't catch a touchdown, James Washington doesn't catch anything. You might need him up there. So I do like Van Nett too. Completely forgot about that for a second. Van Nett, $5,000. Love that play tonight. That's it for this one. Let's run through what we did. If you guys checked out the breakdown for the slate for the NFL slate yesterday. Full roster for the main slate. Let's go ahead and see how we did. I didn't even check it yet. I think we did okay. The only thing I didn't play, even though I put it on there, was Patriots defense was the big thing yesterday. I mean, you could have had great players, but if you didn't have the Pats defense, especially in the 1 p.m. only, oh man, that could have killed you. For cash games, we had Lamar Jackson in there, Patrick Mahomes in there, did okay. Tournaments, Deshaun Watson definitely let us down. Daniel Jones and Jared Goff did their thing. That's pretty good. Eckler, David Johnson, and Wayne Gallman all did their thing for cash games. McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, and Mark Ingram all did well. Our cheap options even did okay. James White started out okay, didn't do the greatest. Josh Jacobs had a pretty good game, and Chris Thompson had a pretty good game, all for their price. I wish James White would have done more because he did start out strong. Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, McLaurin didn't end up playing. We didn't do as good on receivers this week as we did last week, but we had Sterling Shepard in there, which was huge. Brandon Cooks had a good game. Robert Woods was outstanding. Paul Richardson was a huge letdown. That was another thing, too. The 4,700, nobody had that A.J. Brown. I mean, who would have thought? There's always that team every NFL weekend. This week it was the Titans. Just comes out of nowhere. And I remember playing the Titans on one of those single games we did a little bit back, and I was really hoping for A.J. Brown to do something. He just looked terrible. Couldn't catch a ball. And, of course, Sunday he just goes insane for the same price as Paul Richardson. He was 0.2% owned. Defenses, yeah, like I said, the Patriots took the cake, but we had the Bears and the Chargers up there, the next two. Yeah, pretty good. But a lot better week last week. I mean, that's how DFS goes. We got the stacks pretty much right. Nailed the stacks. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot better matchups next week. But let's just go through here and see if we missed or hit on anything else that's worth mentioning. Like I said, going back and looking at what you did certain weeks too, and who you played and their situations and how they play against bad, like average and great defenses, all will help you in the future. So I highly recommend going back through how you did your process, why you picked certain players, and that'll definitely help your process. So I saw someone saying that Christian McCaffrey, they're going to fade him all the time because everybody's going to play him because he's been doing good for the last year and a half. Well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. If he's been doing great for the past year and a half, I'm going to have exposure to him. I don't care how much he is because he's been the winning lineup like 2 weeks in a row now for the Millie Maker. I mean, don't think too much about it when it comes to football. It's not baseball where Mike Trout can get a 0 and Albert Almora Jr. can get 30. It's not like that. Completely different game. Yeah, so I mean, we nailed the Will Dissly play. David Johnson was ended up being a really good play actually for his price. Daniel Jones had a good game. I wish the Redskins could have stayed a little closer. I think Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram especially, he could have gotten a lot more points if they could have been passing the ball a little more. Wayne Gallman, again, don't overthink it. Everybody thought he was going to be super, super chalky, and he only ended up being about, I think, 17% in some of my tournaments, which is very, very low for his price at $5,800. Deshaun Watson was probably our biggest letdown. Him and DeAndre Hopkins, gosh, they just can't get it going. That offensive line does not look very good. Their coaching staff is just terrible. I don't know how many times they've gotten down to, even in the fourth quarter with a lot of time left, and they have no timeouts. I don't know what these guys are doing. But anyways, that's about it. These single games are perfect, especially after a good or bad NFL Sunday. If it's good, you have more to work with. I think the single games are where you can make the most money at, and you can be very different with them. A lot of different ways to think. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a good one. Send me some screenshots if you win big.